Let me tell you about silence. Diplomatic silence. The kind that comes before explosions. Right now, this week, Iran and Israel are not talking. Oman back channels. Closed. Qatar facilitation suspended. Swiss intermediaries silent. And this is not normal silence. This is different. This is deliberate. This is preparation. Both sides know what this silence means. Both understand. Both are preparing. This is what I want to talk about. Not the silence itself, but what silence reveals, what communication breakdown announces, what happens when enemies stop talking and start waiting. Because silence in diplomacy is not absence of communication, is form of communication, is message, is declaration. Let me show you what is really happening, what this silence means, why this is most dangerous moment. First, the ceasefire that was not ceasefire. June 2025, 12-day war between Israel and Iran, direct strikes. Nuclear facilities targeted, Iranian scientists killed. Massive escalation. June 23rd. Trump announces complete and total ceasefire between Israel and Iran. War over. Israel says, we achieved all objectives. Operation Rising Lion successful, but will respond to any violations. Iran says, if Israel launches no further attacks, we have no intention to continue response. But final decision later. Notice language, notice conditionality. Complete and total ceasefire that depends on behavior, that has no timeline, that is really just pause. Not peace, not resolution, not agreement, just suspension of active combat, while both sides regroup. And now, 7 months later, ceasefire is dissolving, is being tested, is approaching end. Because ceasefire without communication is just countdown, is ticking clock, is waiting for trigger, exerman, desponto, tasop, tosop, desponto. Second, what happened to back channels, how they closed before June war. Oman was facilitating 5 rounds of indirect talks between United States and Iran about nuclear program. Not direct negotiations, facilitation. Oman passes messages, creates space, maintains contact. This is crucial function. This is safety valve. When tensions rise, back channels allow communication, allow signaling, allow de-escalation. Example, April 2024, before Iran launched drones and missiles at Israel, Iran got word to Washington through Oman, said response will seek to avoid major escalation. This prevented war. This allowed both sides to calibrate, to understand limits, to avoid miscalculation. Back channels do not prevent conflict, but prevent accidental escalation, prevent misunderstanding becoming. But June 2025, Israel strikes during talks. Nuclear facilities bombed, scientists killed, while 6th round of talks was scheduled. Oman councils cannot facilitate when one side attacks during process, cannot maintain trust when diplomacy is violated. Since then, silence. 7 months, no facilitation, no messages, no contact. This is not just diplomatic failure. This is removing safety mechanism. This is disconnecting emergency brake. This is making accidental war likely. Third, preemptive rhetoric from both sides. Last week, Iran forms new defense council, issues statement. Iran does not consider itself restricted to responding only after action, will treat tangible signs of threat as part of security assessment. This is preemptive doctrine. This is saying, if we detect you preparing to attack, we will strike first. Monday, Netanyahu meets Trump discusses round 2 against Iran, renewed military strikes to prevent Iran rebuilding nuclear and missile capabilities. Trump says, if Iran attempts to reconstitute nuclear program, United States will strike again. Both sides now operating under preemptive logic. Both saying we will not wait for attack, we'll strike when we detect preparation. But how do you detect preparation? How do you know difference between defensive measures and offensive readiness? How do you distinguish precaution from threat? You cannot. This is the trap. This is the spiral. When both sides adopt preemptive posture, any defensive move looks like attack preparation. Any mobilization looks like threat. Any exercise becomes provocation. And without back channels to clarify, without communication to signal, without intermediaries to verify, misunderstanding becomes inevitable. Fourth, Tehran's banners. It will happen again. This week, Iran erects banners across Tehran, large public displays with maps, with locations, with targets, showing Nevatim airbase in Israel, Haifa refinery, Haifa power plant, Udeid airbase in Qatar. American forces caption, it will happen again. Not threat, not warning, just statement, just promise, just certainty. Iranian officials say June strikes were only fraction of our capabilities. Future retaliation could be more extensive. This is public escalation. This is demonstrative preparation. This is showing domestic audience and international community. We are ready. We will respond. We are not deterred. But notice what this reveals. Notice what public display means. If Iran were actually planning immediate strike, would they advertise? Would they show targets? Would they announce intentions? Probably not. Public threats are usually substitute for action, are showing capability to avoid demonstrating willingness, are deterrence through display. But here is problem. When deterrence is too public, when threats are too explicit, when promises are too clear, then not following through becomes weakness, becomes loss of credibility, becomes humiliation. Iran has now publicly committed, has shown targets, has said it will happen again. If Israel or United States strike first, Iran must respond. To maintain credibility, to avoid appearing weak, to fulfill promise. Public threat creates obligation. Display creates commitment. Banner becomes trap. Fifth, Trump's threat about protesters. Sunday, Trump on Air Force One. If Iran resumes killing protesters, United States will come to their rescue. We are monitoring closely. At least 29 protesters killed, over 1,200 arrested nationwide demonstrations. Iran responds immediately. Parliament Speaker, US adventurism will make US bases and forces legitimate targets. Former IRGC commander, any hostile action will destroy Israel, US bases, regional stability. National Security Council Secretary, US interference will destabilize Middle East, destroy US interests. Be mindful of soldier safety. This is escalation through proxy issue. Protest becomes justification for intervention. Internal unrest becomes excuse for external. And Iran's response is, any US action against us, even about protesters, means we strike US bases, means war with United States, not just with Israel. So now situation is Israel threatening to strike Iran for nuclear program, Iran threatening to strike preemptively if detects preparation, United States threatening to strike if protesters are killed, Iran threatening to strike. US bases if United States intervenes. Every party has red line, every side has trigger, every actor has threat, and no one is talking Balkan. Sixth, Why silence is not hiding violence but announcing it. Standard interpretation. When parties stop talking, they are hiding plans, maintaining secrecy, preparing surprise. But this is wrong. This misunderstands function of silence. Silence in this context is not concealment, is declaration, is announcement, is saying we are past point of negotiation. We are entering phase of action. We are no longer trying to prevent. We are preparing. When back channels close, both sides know this is public knowledge. Oman's silence is noticed. Qatar's suspension is reported. Everyone understands. So silence does not hide preparation. Silence reveals that preparation is happening. Silence confirms that diplomacy has failed. Silence announces that violence is. This is why diplomats say as long as they are talking, there is hope, because talking means still trying to avoid war. Silence means accepting war as likely or inevitable. Seventh, deterrence paradox. Making threats more credible makes war more likely. Classic deterrence logic. Make threats so credible that enemy does not test. Show such clear willingness and capability that enemy backs down. Deter through demonstration. But this logic has fatal flaw, fatal trap. To make threat credible, you must actually prepare, must mobilize forces, must position assets, must create capability. But when you prepare to deter, you create fear. When you position assets, you create threat perception. When you demonstrate capability, you create provocation. So both sides trying to deter, both preparing to demonstrate willingness, both showing capability and both seeing others' preparations as threat, as evidence of hostile intent, as justification for preemption. Iran's Defense Council says we can strike preemptively if we detect threat. This is deterrence. Is saying do not attack us, but also creates obligation, creates commitment. If Iran later detects what looks like preparation, must strike or lose credibility. Israel discusses round 2 with Trump. This is deterrence. Is saying we can strike again, we are ready, but also creates Iranian expectation, creates Iranian perception that Israel is planning, that attack is coming, that preemption is justified. Each side's deterrence becomes other side's justification. Each threat meant to prevent war makes war more likely. Each demonstration of resolve creates trigger. The 8, what diplomats call the spiral. How deterrence becomes escalation. Side A threatens to deter. Side B perceives threat as preparation. Side B prepares to preempt. Side A perceives preparation as confirmation of hostile intent. Side A advances preparations. Side B sees advancement as imminent attack. Side B strikes first. This is security dilemma. This is spiral. This is how wars start, that no one wanted, that everyone tried to prevent, that deterrence was supposed to avoid. And spiral accelerates when communication ends, when back channels close, when silence begins. Because without communication cannot signal intentions, cannot clarify preparations, cannot distinguish defensive from offensive. Every move is assumed to be worst case. Every mobilization is seen as attack preparation. Every exercise becomes provocation, and response to provocation becomes confirmation of threat, justifying further response, creating spiral. This is why silence is most dangerous phase. not because it hides plans, but because it removes ability to verify, to clarify, to correct. Ninth, protest as wild card, complicating everything. Iranian domestic situation is unstable. Protests spreading, deaths mounting, arrests increasing. Trump threatens to intervene if protesters killed. Iran says intervention means striking US bases. So now internal crisis can trigger external war. Domestic unrest can become regional conflict. Police response to protests can become justification for military strikes. And Iran's calculation changes when regime is threatened internally, may seek external enemy to unify country, may escalate with Israel or United States to distract from domestic crisis, may provoke confrontation to rally population around flag, or opposite, when regime is weak internally, may be less willing to risk war, may be more cautious, may back down. But which calculation dominates? Distraction or caution, rally or restraint? Without back channels, without communication, without diplomacy, no one knows. No one can verify, no one can predict, and unpredictability increases risk. When you cannot predict how enemy will respond to internal crisis, you cannot calibrate your own actions, cannot know what will provoke and what will deter, cannot manage escalation. Protests make everything more uncertain, and uncertainty makes miscalculation more, and miscalculation in this situation means war. 10th, the ceasefire waiting for violation. Remember June ceasefire, complete and total, but conditional. If no further attacks, 7 months later, both sides claiming other is violating, or preparing to violate, or about to violate. Israel says Iran is rebuilding nuclear program, is reconstituting capabilities, is preparing for future. Therefore, we must strike again. Iran says Israel is planning round 2, is discussing with Trump, is preparing strikes. Therefore, we must strike preemptively. Both sides interpreting ceasefire as you attack, we respond. But also, you prepare to attack, we strike first. And even you might be preparing, so we mobilize. Ceasefire without defined terms becomes test. Who violates first? Who prepares first? Who strikes first? And without back channels to define violation, without communication to establish preparation, without diplomacy to agree on compliance, every action is potential violation. Every move is potential trigger. Every moment is potential beginning. The ceasefire is not preventing war. It's just determining when war resume, and how, and why. Now, let me show you what this silence actually means. What closing back channels reveals. What this moment represents. Silence is not absence of communication. It's type of communication. It's message that says, we are done talking, we are preparing, we are waiting. Closing back channels is not hiding intentions. It's declaring that intentions are fixed, that positions are final, that options have narrowed, that violence is approach. Every diplomat knows, as long as talking continues, hope remains. Not hope for peace, hope for avoiding accidental war, hope for managing escalation, hope for preventing miscalculation. But when talking stops, hope disappears. Not hope in general, hope that enemies understand each other, hope that signals are received, hope that misunderstandings can be corrected. And without this hope, without this mechanism, without this channel, every action is interpreted through lens of worst case. Every preparation is seen as attack. Every move becomes provocation. This is why silence is announcement, is declaration that we have entered danger zone. We are past point of diplomatic resolution. We are in period where miscalculation can trigger war, and we are accepting this risk. Both sides announcing through silence, we are ready, we will not back down. We prefer risk of war to appearance of weakness. Iran's public banners, it will happen again, not threat to Israel, is message to Iranian people, is saying we are strong, we are ready, we will respond. Do not lose faith. Especially important during protest, when regime legitimacy is questioned, when people demand change, show strength, show resolve, show power. Israel's discussions with Trump about round 2, not secret planning, is deliberate leak, is public signaling, is saying we are prepared to strike again. We are not deterred. We maintain initiative. Both sides performing strength, both demonstrating resolve, both showing readiness through public displays that make backing down and United States threatening to intervene if protesters killed. Not humanitarian concern, is establishing justification, is creating red line, is positioning for when red line is public, when threat is explicit, when commitment is announced, then not following through is humiliation, is loss of credibility, is weakness. So all parties now trapped, all have made public commitments, all have issued threats, all have shown targets, all have announced resolve, and all are watching each other, waiting for trigger, preparing for response. This is the silence. This is what it means. This is why it is most dangerous phase. Not because violence is hidden, but because violence is being prepared. Not because intentions are secret, but because intentions are clear. Not because war is unintended, but because war is becoming acceptable slightly. Where not talking is loudest message, where closing channels is clearest signal, where pause in diplomacy is preparation for violence, where violence, Iran and Israel, not talking, Oman not facilitating, Qatar not passing messages, Switzerland not intermediating, and everyone knows what this means, everyone understands, everyone is preparing, Israel mobilizing, Iran positioning, United States threatening, Hezbollah watching, Iraqi militias ready, Yemen preparing, Gulf states nervous, regional war waiting for trigger. One incident, one miscalculation, one protest response, one preemptive strike, and no back channels to clarify, no communication to verify, no diplomacy to de-escalate, just silence, just waiting, just countdown. This is the danger. This is the crisis. This is why silence is not neutral, is not absence, is declaration of intentions, of readiness, of acceptance. When enemies stop talking and start hanging banners showing targets, when deterrence becomes public commitment, when ceasefire becomes countdown, when silence replaces communication, we are not in peace. We are not even in Cold War. We are in the pause before violence, the silence that announces, the quiet that prepares, the stillness before explosion. Welcome to most dangerous moment. Not when missiles fly, not when bases are struck, not when war begins, but now, when talking stops, when channels close, when silence descends. Because silence means both sides have decided we are ready, we will respond, we will not back down, we accept risk, we prepare for war. The missiles have not launched yet, the bases have not been struck yet, the war has not begun yet, but silence says soon, silence says inevitable, silence says waiting for trigger, and in Middle East, triggers are one border incident, one protest response, one perceived violation, one interpreted preparation, one miscalculation, and silence ends. Missiles begin. War starts. This is why diplomats panic at silence. This is why intermediaries work desperately. This is why back channels matter. Not because they prevent conflict, but because they prevent accidental escalation, prevent misunderstanding prevent deterrence spiral becoming inevitable. And now these mechanisms are closed. These channels are silent. These intermediaries are suspended. And both sides are hanging banners, discussing strikes, threatening preemption, and waiting. The ceasefire from June still officially exists, but effectively ended, waiting only for someone to acknowledge, for someone to violate, for someone to strike first. And both sides saying, we will strike if you prepare. But both preparing, both mobilizing, both positioning, both demonstrating, creating exact conditions that justify other side striking. This is the trap, this is the silence, this is most dangerous moment when war has not yet started, but peace has already ended. When violence has not yet occurred, but diplomatic options have exhausted. When missiles have not yet flown, but launch sequences are programmed. Welcome to the silence before war, where quietest time is most threatening, where absence of talking means presence of preparation, where stillness is not peace but countdown. Iran and Israel, silent, preparing, waiting for trigger that can come from anywhere, that can be anything, that can be unintended. But that will be enough, because when back channels are closed, when communication is cut, when silence has descended, there is no mechanism to prevent trigger becoming escalation, no way to stop incident becoming war, no ability to correct misunderstanding before missiles launch. This is the silence that terrifies, not because it hides, but because it reveals that we have entered the zone, the danger zone, the place where war becomes not question of if, but when. And silence is announcement soon, very soon,